هل ما زالت تركيا لاهثة وراء مقعد في الاتحاد الأوروبي أم عادت إلى هويتها العثمانية وتسعى الآن لإحيائها ونشرها؟ تركيا تائهة بين الشرق والغرب. أزمة الهوية التركية من الداخل. معكم زينب صفار، تابعونا. لرقص التانغو ينبغي حضور اثنين، ولعله ربما الرقص الذي تحاول الدولة التركية جاهدة أن تبرع فيه. فالمسرح التركي يحاول دمج راقصين اثنين هما الهوية الشرقية الإسلامية والهوية الغربية. تركيا أصبحت متكاملة على نحو متزايد مع الغرب من خلال عضويتها في منظمات مثل مجلس أوروبا وحلف شمال الأطلسي الناتو ومنظمة التعاون والتنمية الاقتصادية ومنظمة الأمن والتعاون في أوروبا ومجموعة العشرين. تركيا بدأت مفاوضات العضوية الكاملة مع الاتحاد الأوروبي عام 2005. من ناحية أخرى هي عضو في منظمة التعاون الإسلامي ومنظمة التعاون الاقتصادي. هو موقع تركيا على مفترق الطرق بين أوروبا وآسيا، ما جعلها ذات أهمية جيوستراتيجية كبيرة، بيد أن في تركيا حالة من التأرجح بين الشرق والغرب. أورهان باموك الروائي التركي المثير للجدل والفائز بجائزة نوبل للأدب عام 2006 يرى أن الشرق والغرب وجهان لحضارة إنسانية واحدة، وأن على تركيا التشبث بثقافتها الشرقية وعدم التخلي عنها. مدير مركز التيارات السياسية العالمية المختص بالسياسة الخارجية في جامعة اسطنبول كولتور في تركيا، والمستشار لدى برنامج السياسة الخارجية في مؤسسة الدراسات الاجتماعية والاقتصادية التركية، الكاتب والبروفيسور منصور أكفون، ماذا يقول عن تركيا وتمايلها بين الشرق والغرب، خاصة بعدما أشارت استطلاعات الرأي الآن إلى تفاوت كبير في تركيا قبل ما يسمى بالربيع العربي وبعده، حيث انخفضت النسب إلى ما دون 50% ممن يحبذون الانضمام إلى الاتحاد الأوروبي. وهل يعني أنه على تركيا أخذ دور إقليمي أكبر في المشرق؟ وهل مساعي تركيا أن تكون جزءاً من منظمة شانغهاي تأتي في هذا السياق؟ وماذا عن موقع تركيا اليوم في الشرق الأوسط والسياسة الإقليمية؟ Professor Mansour Agun, Director of the Political Sciences Faculty at Kültür University Istanbul and International Relations Expert, welcome to The Inside.
Thank you very much.
What can you tell us about Turkey today? Does Turkey consider itself a European nation or an Asian one? Or it's lost between this and that?
Not lost, but in, torn between two lovers. And we are,
we need two to tango, huh?
Yes, of course. And we have very much a long-term affiliation with the Middle East and with the Islamic world. And also, since the establishment of the Republic, even before that, we have been, trying to, change ourselves, westernize ourselves, and it has, created a sort of embedded identity which incorporates two elements, or even more than two identities under the same umbrella. I think you can call Turkey both Middle Eastern and also European at the same time. And people tend to feel themselves as Turks, or as as people belonging to Turkey, but not necessarily Middle Eastern or European.
But why? The question here might rise: why has Turkey been a supplicant for a long time for the EU membership? Is it because the West wants, for example, to use Turkey as a cannon fodder for NATO wars and not to sit with the Turks on the same table as equals?
No, not necessarily, but there had been some discrimination. We have been almost a permanent candidate for the last 50 years for the EU. When the Ankara Treaty was signed in 1963, it was a long time ago, and now we are in 2013. We are going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Ankara Treaty. So since then, and some are related to Turkey's deficiencies, like in the human rights field, in the lack of democracy, and also economy. But some other factors were very much related with the reluctance of our European counterparts because of our culture and because of our predominant religion. So if we were in a Muslim country, of course, they would be much more, embracive, and they would be willing to incorporate Turkey long before. But unfortunately, because of the hypocrisies prevailing in Europe and certain parts of Europe, they are still reluctant to incorporate Turkey as a member of EU. But this attitude began to change, and I hope that in the near future they will be able to accept Turkey as a normal candidate country.
Croatia, for example, which started the accession negotiations at the same time when Turkey did, is going to actually it fulfilled all the rules for the accession, and now it's going to be this year part of the EU.
You're right.
Why Turkey is still, away?
We are a big country, first of all. We had a lot of problems among ourselves, and still some of them are going on, like the Kurdish one. And also we had problems which we couldn't settle for quite some time with the Greek Cypriots, and they put the blame on Turkey despite the fact that Turkey was the one who wanted to settle the problem in 2004, and also the Turkish side supported the last UN plan in 2004 on the 24th of April. But nevertheless, both Turkey and the Turkish side were the ones who were punished by our European counterparts.
Sir, a recent survey has showed that not a majority anymore of people in Turkey desire to be part of the European Union. And in this opinion survey, which was published a couple of months ago by the Istanbul-based Center for Economic and Foreign Relations Studies, only 33% of those surveyed thought Turkey should persist with membership in the next 5 years. Why?
This is unfortunately the case in Turkey, and I think this is not only about the survey or those people who are surveyed, but it's reflecting the reality on the ground. There's multiple reasons, and the first reason is, of course, the rejectionist attitude of the Europeans, and people are tired of this talk of European membership. And secondly, what is taking place in Europe, they are in crisis, and our role model has always been Greece, and Greece has collapsed, and Spain is in big trouble, and it's the same for Portugal.
The EU all is falling in the abyss of the economic crisis and the austerity measures, and
By looking at all these and by comparing Turkey with the rest of the EU member countries, the people tend to believe that we are lucky that we are not a member of the European Union, because then we would also be shouldering, just like the Germans, the debts of the others, or they call it the laziness of the others. There are a multitude of factors, and also there is a self-confidence, many Turks, due to our special relations with the Middle Eastern countries, with the Arab countries.
So does Turkey here aspire for a bigger role in the Orient?
Not in the
or in the Islamic,
in the Islamic
Muslim
world, yes, they are aspiring to play a more prominent role, and but equal role. It's not like establishing a new empire or establishing an hegemony of cultural, economic, or political sort, but they want to play a role, and they want to contribute to the fate of the region. They are not any longer indifferent to what's going on in the region, which has been demonstrated both in attempts to reconcile the differences between Syria and Israel, and they try to play a role in Palestinian problem, and also they reacted to the suffering of the region, like they did in late 2008 when Israel intervened to Gaza.
The cost-led operation.
You would remember the incident in Davos, and criticizing Israel, and he left the floor. And unfortunately, at that time we had the representative of Arab League, the Secretary General, was trying to follow him, Amr Musa, but he was asked by the UN Secretary General to sit down, then he sat down. So this has also reflected, I think, you would know it much better than I do, but it had some impact on the minds of the people in the Middle East, but also in Turkey too.
And then later you had the Mavi Marmara and
Marmara incident.
9 people were martyred
killed,
there,
and one more later, and almost 10 people were killed by the Israelis. So that's, this has created a sort of solidarity feeling between Turkey and the Arab world. And this has also contributed to Turkey's alienation from the
West, from the
European Union.
In talking about Mavi Marmara, what happened? What are the final conclusions? Did the investigation reach any steps further towards the Israelis, for example, taking action against them, taking some people to the court?
They took actions in the court, and I don't know whether it will be conclusive action, but nevertheless it has enormous symbolic value, because they were prosecuting for the first time as far as I know, for the first time Israeli soldiers are prosecuted outside their territorial boundaries, and so it has enormous symbolic value. But if you ask my opinion, what has happened in Mavi Marmara, I think it was a mismanagement on both sides, and Turkey could have done it much better. And
in what sense?
In what sense? Some of the activists on the ship was claiming that they were going to sacrifice their lives, and civic activism does not entail life sacrifices, but you go
maybe
there
they were
to
too much carried away, the passion,
yes,
whatever.
And this
because the situation when you're on such a boat and you're breaking the siege is different than on the ground.
But then on our part we also had some problems. But of course, when you look at what the Israelis did, it's not comparable, it's not excusable. And they slaughtered 10 people there, and 9+1, and they you have seen the reports, I'm sure, and they were there were unbelievable torture and torturing people, and in the UN report this was vindicated, but. What is important right now is that we should try to normalize our relations with Israel, and it will never be the same again, and as before. But nevertheless, we need functioning relations in order to play a role with the Israelis, in order to play a role in the region, and particularly in finding a solution to the Palestinian problem.
Yes, but how can you describe the relation now between the Turkish and the Israeli?
And it's cold, and even we are from time to time at the civil society level, we are organizing meetings, and there are some with the elements who are progressive, who are trying to find a solution, and who put the blame on Israel, and who wants to have a settlement on the Palestinian question, but unfortunately they don't represent the majority in Israel. And I hope their voices will be heard in the future and more. And Turkey can be instrumental in empowering those type of people who are in minority right now in Israel, by contributing to and by normalizing relations with Israel, and it can, through this normalization process, can contribute to the settlement of the Palestinian problem.
Right.
But Turkey, of course, has no miracle at its disposal, but we can only contribute, we can only facilitate.
Right, Dr. Mansour Agun, we're going to stop now for a short break, and then when we come back, we'll discuss more the role of Turkey between the East and the West. The Inside will be back after the break. Stay tuned. welcome back to the Inside. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has visited the European Union countries and also Turkey at a time when EU-Turkey relations are at a stalemate, maybe in an attempt to bring revive this kind of relation. Or we can note here that this time is when Turkey is trying also to find accession to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So what does that really mean?
You know, I think we have all taken this Shanghai joke.
Are they just trying to pinch,
No,
the
I
European?
think we have all taken this Shanghai joke very seriously.
It's a joke then.
It is a joke. I mean, because the Prime Minister twice on the same TV program, I think in between there was something like 6 months, was referring to Shanghai Cooperation Organization as Shanghai 5. And he was joking about his, his talk with President Putin, and so this reference was taken very seriously by the Turkish media and of course by the international media as well. And a lot of ink has been split on this, and including myself, I wrote a couple of articles, and we are now going to publish a policy brief on that, issue, whether Turkey can be a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization or not. Obviously, Turkey cannot, and it was not a real, threat or a bluff by the Turkish Prime Minister, but it was just an insinuation that Turkey, what Turkey should do, should we, apply to Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Type of insinuation that the Prime Minister was referring to, and there is no serious talk. By the way.
Yeah, excuse me here to interrupt you. Also, the Turkish President, Mr. Abdullah Gül, he said a month ago that while hosting his Serbian counterpart and the Prime Minister while visiting the Czech Republic, he felt the need to unequivocally state that relations with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization cannot be seen as an alternative to EU membership.
Sure, which is the official position of the country. And I don't think the Prime Minister has any incentive to change that official standing of the country, because Shanghai Cooperation Organization is basically established against NATO and the American expansion. So we are a member of NATO since 1952, and
so it was just a maneuver.
There is no debate about NATO exit in Turkey. So it's not just a maneuver. It's just a pleasant talk with the journalists, just an insinuation towards the European governments, but nevertheless it paid off, and we are still discussing whether Turkey will become a Shanghai member or not. And also the same debate goes on in Europe too, and I've been since then I've been a couple of countries recently, and they are all asking the same question, whether it was a serious or
yes, maybe this is what prompted and here back to talk about the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, because according to Kemal Kirişçi, senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, prior to Kerry's visit to the region, he said, quote, "While in Turkey, Kerry must remind the Turkish side of the very complex nature of the challenges which face Turkey and its neighborhood, and also add that Turkey must avoid policies that play into the hands of the naysayers in the EU to Turkish accession. Turkey is much more likely to continue to be an inspiring example for economic and political transformation in its neighborhood if it re-engages the EU rather than drifts away from it." Maybe they took this seriously of the Shanghai cooperation.
Kemal is a very good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, and he was here in Turkey and recently moved to Brookings and in January. And he has his own concerns, obviously, but I'm not so much concerned about Turkey's drifting away from the West, which has been quite a debate, particularly after this famous confrontation that we were referring to in Davos. And for some reason, people in U.S., particularly in conservative think tank communities, they thought that Turkey was shifting its axis and moving away from the West. And of course,
it's also part of the NATO. It can't just move.
No, I mean there is no debate. There is no intention of moving away from NATO or moving away from European Union. And these, different identities, different relationship with all these organizations. We are an observer, a special observer status. We have a special observer status in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But this doesn't mean that we are going to be a member. But this doesn't mean that we cannot or we will not be a member in the future. If something happens within our own alliance structure, then Turkey may shift its attitude and change the alliance preferences. But at the moment there is nothing like that, and I don't think that neither Kemal nor our Arabic audience should have any second thoughts about Turkey's orientation.
Now, you've conducted this survey, which is about the perception of Turkey in the Middle East in 2012. What can you tell us about the survey, which you usually conduct for the
for the last four years actually we have been conducting this poll within TESEV's framework, Turkish Economic and Social Studies Foundation, together with a major company called KA. And what we found out was that
who is the sample first?
The sample source is about 3,000 people and 16 countries are covered. We started with 6 countries and then we enlarged to 16. And to our surprise, pleasant surprise, we found out at the first report that we found out Arab like Turks. And we were, to tell you the truth, we were not expecting
Did you doubt this before?
Yeah, we doubt this before because of the history and because of the imperial past and because of the nationalist legacy in each Arab country, and because of education system, and also because of our indifference until very recently towards the Middle Eastern affairs. And we never thought that we would so much be liked. And at some places, and we are the top country to be liked among all. And maybe you can share the findings later with your audience as well. But it was quite astonishing.
I would like you to highlight some of the findings of this survey.
Turkey is considered as a role model, for instance, for the Middle East, and for understandable reasons, because we are now with the AKP government combining Islam with democracy, and there is a booming economy and an independent standing. Despite the fact that we are a member of NATO, still we can pursue an independent, an autonomous policy from the rest of the NATO member countries, and we are quite assertive when it comes to regional and international global issues.
But Dr. Agun, do you consider Turkey a democracy?
I do, despite some definitions.
In what sense it is a democracy when you don't have freedom of speech?
Yeah, you're right, and that's what we are criticizing for. But if you, there are problems in freedom of speech, but nevertheless, when you compare,
and the Kurdish question is also, it breaches democracy.
It's weakening democracy, and that's why we want to solve it. But on the other hand, when you compare Turkish democratic standards, and which is quite high in comparison to many other countries, even those in the EU, it's not too bad in terms of democratic standards, and that's why they accepted Turkey as fulfilling by the European Union. Turkey was accepted
the terms for accession.
As fulfilling the accession criteria, which is called Copenhagen criteria. And there are too many deficiencies, but nevertheless, we were referring to the Kurdish problem. But a party affiliated with PKK is in the parliament, and they are functioning. BDP is in the parliament. And we have problems related with freedom of speech, but it's much better than 10 years ago. And we had a friend of mine, he is an Armenian journalist, was slaughtered by the deep state simply because what he said about the Armenians. and simply because what he said about the Turkish nationalism. But it's no longer the case now in Turkey. So there are some restrictions there, and we need to change lots of laws which are at the verge of change. But nevertheless, it is a formidable democratic country.
Hopefully.
In many ways.
Yes,
and it will remain as such, hopefully, in the future too.
But let's go back to the findings of your survey, sir.
As I said, combining Islam and democracy was, and also the economic performance of the country and independent autonomous standing, led people think that Turkey was a model country for them, and quite a high number of people, depending on the time and the country. Quite high number of people in the Middle East find Turkey as a role model, and they sympathize with Turkey, and they believe that Turkey will become an economic power in 10 years. Now they consider, of course, Saudi Arabia as the economic power, but they believe that Turkey will become the economic hub of the region in 10 years.
But Turkey is now facing dire problems with its neighbors, like with Iraq, Syria, among others.
But it is temporary. I mean, and it will not. Hopefully, this Syrian problem will not prevail forever. And in one way or the other, there will be a settlement, and we hope that there will be a settlement in Iraq too. And
a settlement which is in favor of Turkey?
Not necessarily in favor of Turkey. I mean, I cannot speak on behalf of Turkey, but as an observer, I think in favor of the entire Iraqi people, and which will take into account the interests of all the sects and the religious communities and different ethnicities in Iraq, and we will not have that much confrontation, and no proxy sectarian war will be conducted in the future, hopefully in Iraq. Through different actors.
Yes. What's your recommendation, your final recommendation through this survey?
The final recommendation is that Turkey should use its, influence over these people for good cause, and for the democratization of this region, for the stability of this region, and boosting up its own model role by developing its own democracy, and by changing the human rights standards, and adopting the same norms and the practices that we see in Europe.
Right, Professor Mansour Agun, Director of the Political Sciences Faculty at Kültür University in Istanbul and expert in international relations. Many thanks indeed for this interview from Istanbul. You're most welcome, sir. إذا لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة، ودائما من الداخل. للمزيد من التواصل بريدنا theinside@almayadeen.net. إذا theinside@almayadeen.net من كل فريق عمل من الداخل من إسطنبول. إلى اللقاء.